What do we do with silence? Last year in August, I went on an RA retreat to the middle of nowhere where we had no bathrooms and no nothing. And my leaders decided that all of us should have a time of quiet out in the middle of the woods by ourselves for an extended amount of time of which we did not know. So we begin up the journey on the mountain. Granted, we weren't going to have lunch either, so I convinced them to give me at least an apple. So we're walking up this hill, and as we go, they place us in different spots to where you can't see the person next to you. So you're alone, and you're supposed to be taking this time to spend with the Lord and have quiet time. Being an extroverted person, I am dreading this because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be stuck up here. You can only have one comfort item, and which I brought my sleeping bag, which is really smart. And we're stuck there. So what do we do with silence? Surprisingly, I loved it. I wrote a song, I took a nap. When they came back 5.5 hours later, literally 5.5 hours later, I was like, wow, you're already back? This is great. And on the other hand, there were other people whose response to the silence was like building a path. Some people were making up stories, doing plays. Our wonderful president, Nate Smith, was building a fort out of any loose twigs and rocks that he could find, trying desperately to see the person next to him. And you hear horror stories of those who hated their time, 5 hours by themselves. But what do we do with silence? I feel like it's either you love it and you find peace, or we avoid it like the plague and seek for anything and everything to fill up the time. In the text today, Amos 8 and 9, we have the prophet Amos that God has sent to the people of Israel to warn them of their wickedness and their disobedience, warning them of the coming exile that was going to happen. So the Assyrians to take over all of Israel and the Babylonians to take over Judah. And as well, God is asking Amos to tell them of this 400 years of silence that the scholars say are between the Old Testament and the New Testament, where God didn't speak. In this time, we are right here in Amos 8:11, and it says, "The days are coming, declares the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine through the land, not a famine of food or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Men will stagger from sea to sea and wander from north to east, searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it." And it goes on to talk about young men and young women fainting because of the thirst for the words of the Lord. 400 years. These people that I was with could barely go 5 hours with silence, and they've gone 400 years. This is what is going to happen. They're going to go 400 years without hearing the voice of the Lord. I've been there. Last year for me, ironically starting from my lovely time of 5 hours of silence, from that point until about October of this year, was a year of silence, was a season of silence. It was a period of questioning for me, not because of the silence, but I was questioning my faith. I was questioning, what is church supposed to look like? Is God even real? Is he who he says that he is? And during this period of questioning, God was silent. I read my Bible daily. I was working so hard to do anything that I could. I was like, God, speak to me, begging him, Lord, come, do something. Let me feel you at least a little bit. Let me know your voice. Let me know something of your characteristics. Show me who you are in some way. I'm in chapel at worship services, Lord, come. Watching people experience God and feeling nothing myself. On top of that, I'm in positions of leadership. I am an RA for 45 girls, and apparently us RAs are supposed to have all this wisdom and know everything about everything. So I'm leading these girls, as well as I'm a junior in the ministry department, so I have to have an internship, right? And I don't have a church at this time, so I have to go find myself a church and go talk to and answer all of these junior hires questions about a God who I knew nothing about. Only just head knowledge, really. And I was so frustrated. If you've ever been there, it was just so frustrating because I knew what God had promised in his word. I had always clung to Jeremiah 29:13 where it says, you will seek me and you will find me if you seek me with all your heart. And I'm like, God, this is what you said. I have been seeking you faithfully. It's been months and months and months. It's been a year. Where are you? When are you going to speak? I'm trying my best to do what you're asking me to do. More than that, I've either heard stories or we know people. I know people that have literally rejected God their entire lives, have rejected who he was, done whatever they wanted, and then they're like, just in a flippant cast of the hand, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. And you hear those awesome stories of where God comes in the middle of their situation and he reveals himself to them. Or other people who have been in the church and who have gone on and done what they wanted to do and come back to the Lord and said, God, answer me. And he comes and he answers. And I'm like, God, I have been faithful to you all of my life. From the time that I was out of the womb, learning about you, deciding for myself that this is what I wanted, that you are the God that I was going to serve, that when your people, the church, have hurt me and my family, instead I worshiped and I thanked him. And in those times, I invested more into those people and into the people even more people in the church and everything. I had been faithful. I was so frustrated. In this time, get where the Israelites got, trying anything and everything to remove the void, to relieve themselves of the crushing nothingness that comes on you. The reality that life is worthless without hope or direction. I can see why people today do anything for the slightest bit of pleasure because even that momentary relief is better than nothing. Because if there is no Jesus, there is no hope. In chapter 9 in Amos, God begins to describe the destruction that he's going to do in Israel. And he's like, I'm going to completely destroy you. And within this, God begins to say, this is who I am. And he says, the Lord Almighty, he who touches the earth and it melts, and all who live in it mourn. The whole land rises like the Nile and sinks like the river of Egypt. He who builds his lofty palace in the heavens and sets its foundation on the earth, who calls for the waters of the seas and pours them out over the face of the land. The Lord is his name. And he goes on and he says, did I not bring Israel up out of Egypt? Here God is contrasting the scale of who he is to the scale of the Israelites and their problems, the scale of who we are, the scale of human beings. And God's like, this is who I am. In the exile, within the silence, this is who I am. And he points us back to himself. He pointed me back to himself. One day, a couple months ago, he clearly spoke to me and he said, position yourself toward my face. And just so you know, it's not a process of running back to him. All you have to do is turn around. He says, position yourself toward my face. And what did I find? Right here in verse 11. In that day, I will restore David's fallen tent. I will repair its broken pieces. I will restore its ruins and build it as it used to be, so that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations that bear my name, declares the Lord. I found hope in Jesus. And here it is. You've been waiting all this time for my big thing. This is the bottom line. That Jesus brings hope in the silence. There is nothing if there is not Jesus. God, in this passage, he's bringing everything past the famine of words, past the destruction of Israel. That within that, he brings everything back to himself and to our hope in Jesus. Jesus brings hope in the silence. Now, why Jesus versus God bringing hope in the silence? Well, right here, in that day, I will restore David's fallen tent. And the Israelites, the Jews, would look at this passage and count that as a messianic prophecy. So this specifically is talking about Jesus. This is raising a hope that from the beginning of the Old Testament, the beginning of time, this hope, the one that's going to go until the end, that this is Jesus, that Jesus is the hope. The reality that he will not reject his people, that he does indeed keep his promises. He brought them out of exile. He brought me out of my silence. Thank God. He will bring you out of your silence, or the silence that you will experience at some point. The actual person of Jesus is your hope in the silence. That within it, the person of Jesus, in the midst of it, he is your hope. And the last thing I want to say is that he will speak. More than him meeting me in my silence and telling me that this is who I am and that there is no hope without me and I am your hope, and this amazing revelation. I know it's so simple, but if you really get that Jesus is your hope, it blows your mind, blows my mind. But more than just meeting me there, he will speak. And for me, he came and he revealed himself to me in a way that I couldn't describe. And he didn't leave me alone. Yeah, no matter how long it's going to be, whether it's 400 years of silence, whether it's a year of silence, whether it's a couple months, whether it's 10 years, he will speak. And I'm going to leave you with this. It says in Jeremiah 29:13, "You will seek me and find me if you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity." Thank you.